All right, here we are in 12.23, and I'm Chris. Nate couldn't be here today. He's on like a road trip for work or something, but I am joined by my patch review duo partner, Jason,
Good to be here, Chrissy. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess.
and nobody else. All right, this one's coming out a few days earlier than usual for when this goes live, so there might actually be some slight differences for when this is finished in like 4 days from now. But I'm pretty sure it'll still be largely the same then. With that being said, let's hop right into it. And first up is a Mumu. And I'm usually pretty happy with anything they do with the Mumu, honestly. He's such like a classic champion. And for how long he like fights people, I really like this change to his W. And his E, where it goes off a cooldown every time he like gets auto attacked. Yeah, I definitely like all of these changes.
I'm of two minds about this. Amumu has largely been played support recently, rather than jungle, where he belongs, or even top lane, where I'd like to see him more. And what we end up getting here is a lot of changes that will essentially, because it's improving his base stats or his base numbers in the case of Despair, it's going to make the support of Mumu even better. Now, that's counterbalanced by the fact that the bandage toss, kind of being the most important part of support of Mumu's kit, is going up in its mana cost. So it's weird that they kind of buffed and nerfed support of Mumu at the same time here. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, but I think this change is okay. I think it's going to be a slight buff overall.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say
The one
so.
thing I want to ask you is, do you think that raising the numbers on Despair at max rank is going to change the order in which he skills this?
Yeah, for all of Amumu's life, there's kind of been an argument to max any of his three abilities first, I find. Uh,
Do you think this significantly strengthens the argument of maxing W, particularly over E, but even over Q in some cases?
Honestly, on support, I feel like Emax would be the best
Okay.
because if he's laning against an AD carry, he'll be able to use Tantrum a lot more. And Tantrum also has a passive effect where it blocks a certain amount of flat damage. And if you're taking more instances of damage, then you're getting more uses out of it. So I feel like Tantrum would be the best.
Yeah, that's a
Plus,
really
they're
good point.
not nerfing,
And
or they're not buffing his W by that much, to be honest.
it's 20% at max rank, 25% at max rank.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's pretty
25%
big.
of a little bit.
Right,
So
right, right, right. But it's 25% of like the entire value of that skill.
if it was
And that's kind
moving,
of nice.
if it was going to like 1 to 4%, then it'd be like, yeah, that's a lot. But
Yeah. But over time, this really can add up. Like I cannot tell you how many times I've died to a Moo because of despair. When he essentially had nothing left in his kit and was just basically walking me down. Given that bandage toss only the cooldown only reduces by half a second per rank, I can definitely see what you're saying as far as E being a good max for support of Mumu.
yeah, it's just way more efficient if he's laning against a ranged person.
Yeah, the calculus is really interesting here.
Okay, next up, the Gath, and we got some Titanic buffs here, which I'm surprised to see with the release of Heartsteel that they would do this.
Yeah,
Because
this is ridiculous. Go
this
on.
is Carnivore is like a partial revert to during the durability patch when he lost healing and mana on this, I think. So they're giving some of it back, but that's kind of apples and oranges. The big thing here is the W, his silence, and the scream. Most people play Cho'Gath pretty tanky, so him getting like his Q also does 300 at rank 5 or 305 or 310 or something. So this is pretty crazy, but obviously the most absurd thing is his ultimate uh, losing its cooldown with more points into it, because that just means more opportunity to stack, and it stacks with its own. It empowers itself with more stacks, so just more craziness.
Yes, 60 seconds, which is what it's going to be at rank 3 now, is kind of the gold standard for it will be up in every fight in an organized game. It will be up in every single fight for you. Uh, Even if you run from base after a death
Yeah,
and get back into the fight and immediately fight, it will be there for you in the mid to late game. And
yeah,
with the way that a lot of the tank items offer cooldown reduction now, which is not always something that was true in the past. That's not even going to be a 60 seconds. That's going to be more like 36, 40 seconds, and that's why it will be up in every single fight for you.
well, actually, the new tank items actually lost CDR than the
Um,
old ones.
yeah, yeah. I'm talking more about before the entire like item rework from last season, from 2 seasons ago. Whenever they redid most of the items in the game, and whenever they introduced mythics, that was when they added CDR to a lot of tank items that didn't used to have it.
I think Ultimate Hunter is probably of more consequence.
That too. That too. I mean, there's just a
Just
lot more ways. Go
it's
on.
really easy to slot into any build of his.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways for tanks to build cooldown reduction or ability haste now that they did not have
He has
in the
he
far past.
he has
I know
such
that
a
you were,
solid kit that runes aren't actually that important on him.
yeah, and I was just very surprised to see these buffs overall. Yes, although I haven't seen a lot of Cho'Gath lately, and I'm really surprised about that since he would be like the ultimate Heartsteel user. Just all of the hugely overpowered tank items from the last patch meant that he was going to get so good. I think he got additional buffs last patch as well, didn't he? So to see him get more here is
I don't
just
recall that.
it's mind-boggling either way.
Yeah, he's one of my
Like take this
favorite.
guy onto the rift, you're going to climb.
Yeah, for a
Especially
while.
if you especially if you see an enemy team that isn't going to be able to really punish you for building these like high HP, low mobility super tanks. If you're not seeing like double ADCs or percent health damage on the other team, if you're seeing stuff like Zyra support, if you're seeing stuff like Veigar mid, just just take this guy into them. You will not die. You will not die, and you'll be a terror.
Yeah, he's a great blind pick mid, I think, and
Togev?
yeah,
Yeah, not bad.
and I actually think he's very good against AD assassins mid. He tends to have a really easy time out trading them, and they have a really hard time just not misstepping against his really easy combos.
Yeah. If you can, yeah, I guess the one issue there is it's pretty easy early on to get pushed onto your turret. Now with Cho'Gath, it's not that hard to actually CS under your turret. If you can get good with that, he seems like a pretty good safe blind pick, actually.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
next up we got Dr. Mundo, who's getting a lot of changes.
I know you like this.
Yeah, I find this to be more. We were talking about this the other day. I actually find this to be some kind of light homage to trying to roll back his rework to some degree. Now, obviously, they didn't really do that, but I feel like this pushes him more in the direction of where he was at the patch right before his rework than how he
No, I
was
don't
right
know.
after his rework. Like he has a little bit more consistency and less situational strength, which is like what they shifted like everything basically into. And that's why he was good in my opinion, or way better in my opinion before his rework, because so much of his power was consistent instead of like inconsistent.
So there's a lot of changes here, some of which are actually kind of important to know if you're going to be landing against him. Do you want to give the real quick rundown of it, Chrissy?
Yeah, I mean they buffed his passive ultimately, but they nerfed half the heal on the active component. But that was pretty inconsequential. The big thing about that is the cleanse effect that it automatically gives you. The fact that that had a heal component is completely inconsequential, to be honest. The cleanse effect is so powerful that
Hmm.
yeah, just even if it didn't heal for anything and it still gave the passive healing, it would
Yeah.
still be extremely powerful.
And costing a lot less health is nice because sometimes you can't run back and pick up the suitcase if you're playing Corporate Mundo.
Mm, it's like some kind of canister or
Yeah.
something.
Isn't it a suitcase if you're playing Corporate?
No, it's something else because that was one
Okay.
of the first skins I bought.
Should be a suitcase.
And then his awkward W, which I honestly never liked. They kind of making it more like Garen's W, where it's
That's
kind of a
exactly,
timing
yeah.
thing now, where now you want to use it right when you're gonna get like your ass blown off, and that's when you'll be able to fill up the shield much faster rather than being on for a longer period of time. Then
Yeah.
they
Not only
also gave it like a dummy effect where you get a heal no matter what now instead of actually having to hit someone with it.
right, and that's kind of nice because if you are kind of in that escape mode and you know that you're about to take a lot of burst damage at once and you can get the timing right, like you can use your W, store 80 to 95% of the damage taken instead of 25 to 45%. And get half of that damage that you stored back as you're running away, like the coward that you are.
Yeah, when you read this ability, it seems like it's strong, but I actually find that I max this last because it just doesn't feel as useful until much later in the game.
I actually, I don't usually skill this until I have at least 4 points in my queue.
Well, that might be
That may
silly.
change now. That may change now, but I've just very rarely actually found it in the early game to be worth using, to be worth sacrificing the health and running right up to most champions to try and use.
I feel like it's pretty weak in the early game.
Yeah, it is, and I'm not saying that it's correct to wait that long to skill it, but it's what I do. I've tried both ways, and I like waiting until level 7, 8, even 9 occasionally to skill that thing.
Yeah, mean Qs and strong autos from his E, I feel like are way more powerful early on.
Yeah, for sure.
And that let's go towards the E, which got kind of a monster buff. They kind of shifted power from his ultimate to his E. And we were kind of arguing about this the other day about how the math on this actually works.
Hmm.
And I do think you were correct. The permanent flat AD he gains from this is now what's scaling instead of him getting this bonus only when it's active. But I don't believe it's stated here, but there is actually another like ratio on this ability for the active effect, and all this that's being changed, I think, is just the passive effect.
Yeah,
For the
that's how I believe it works as well. And I cannot understate how huge this is.
yeah,
Instead of getting 4 to 7% bonus health as bonus attack damage while your ultimate is active, which is how it used to be before this patch, now you are permanently getting, based on the rank of your E, 2.5 to 4.5% of your maximum health. That's your base and your bonus. Which again, with things like Heartsteel or even some of these other very high health tank items, Sunfire, you may have 6,000, 7,000 plus health on this guy late game. You are getting a 250 bonus AD permanently.
yeah, it's worth noting that his ultimate
Which
one
is
was
still
only attack damage on bonus health.
right.
So, and
Which could
just
have still been a lot, but
yeah,
that's only during your ult.
just for comparison, Titanic Hydra is only 2% bonus health conversion, and this is automatically stronger than that with just 1 point.
Yeah, this is going to be useful when you're just trying to chase someone down. This is going to be useful after your ultimate wears off. This will be useful when you're trying to just take turrets on a split push.
In fact,
I
this
mean, this
might be
is
so useful that it'll even be good at level 1, maybe. I mean, this will
yeah,
automatically give you like another 8 or 10 attack damage at level 1.
yeah, and I think this also, some people did build like some kind of mixed health and AD on Mundo. I think this changes the calculus to just build health all the way, build as much health as you can. Don't even worry about AD. Blunt Force Trauma, whether it's active or not, is going to be giving you 250 bonus AD in the late game. You don't need any
Yeah,
other AD.
I think that was always what you should have been doing on him. This
Probably.
goofy thing with indexing like a huge 80 steroid into his ultimate, I think that was always a stupid idea. They just shifted so much power from his ultimate to give him that it just made him garbage. And that wasn't what he was about.
I
This
don't think he
he's
was
yeah.
garbage, but I know what you're saying. Yeah,
Well, he wasn't the type of strong that he was before his rework.
it was a
And
different type of
yeah,
strong.
now they were doing that, they also gave him a lot of strength back on his ultimate, the healing component. And this is getting a little calculation behind this is getting quite goofy because this is an increase to his base health, which gets taken into account before his max health heal is taken into account. And all of these get amplified by 5% at rank 3 on top of that per enemy champion next to him. So there's three
Yeah,
different things going into this equation, never mind Spirit Visage or Revitalize. So this is next level silliness in terms of math. Keep in mind the old Mundo literally just said 130% health over 10 seconds or something. So, yeah,
yeah. Was it
but
even that much? Yeah.
it got buffed like 4 times right before his rework, and that's when he
Right,
was
right.
like really good. Because Grievous
Okay.
Wounds kept getting like so more and more common, so they kept buffing it.
Yeah, so definitely keep building Spirit Visage. But otherwise just
Yeah,
go for straight health. Uh
yeah,
yeah, this is some nice buffs. Do you think it's going to be possible for most comms to kill this guy late game?
yeah. I mean, it's even with these really nice buffs, he's
Hmm.
still not as obnoxiously tanky as he was before his rework. That heal with Spirit Visage without Grievous Wounds was absolutely preposterously strong, and he even got tenacity from his old W before, and he doesn't have that now. It's good, but it still won't be as strong as he was before. That being said,
In fairness,
his
he does. Go on, go on.
yeah, that being said, his ultimate is based on his health, and now there are more ways to get more max health. So it could be actually about as strong with some serious grass overgrowth heart steel abuse shenanigans going on.
Yeah, I
So
feel like it may actually be stronger, at least for the next patch or two. And in fairness, in addition to that, he also has 100% tenacity on his passive.
you're right about that.
All right, that was a nice deep dive on Mundo.
Yeah, I when I see these changes, it actually makes me want to play him as a blind pick again. And I was very turned off on him after his rework, and he was one of my favorite champions too.
The doctor is in, baby.
But yeah, seeing the E and R changes really make me happy. Oh, one more thing I'd like to throw out there: the way his Q functions. If you last hit something with it, it heals you for the cost. If you're running Spirit Vista Revitalize, it actually overheals you every single time you last hit with it, which is a really gimmicky way of sustaining in the lane phase.
Yeah, I think that they reduced the heal refund down to like 80%, so
And
it kind
no,
of
they put it back.
oh, did they make it 100% again?
It was 40 and 80 for a while, then they put it
Yeah.
back to 50 and 100.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it will actually be an overheal. You
Hmm.
can profit in health.
It's
And
very obnoxious with Revitalize in the laning phase.
the reason they dropped it to 4080 was for exactly that reason. They wanted to make it a refund, when you're building the things that you're probably going to be building with Mundo anyway. And I guess because he was underperforming, they said, "Yeah, all right, take the profit."
I only mention that because the only change with his Q is they made the health cost even higher, which means the health return will be even higher if you're running Revitalize.
Yeah, good point, Chrissy.
Okie dokie. Next up is Cassidon, and these changes look kind of funny, but my opinion is this won't really change the way he functions at all. Now, when you first look at this change to his E, his little cone slow thing, it looks like a huge nerf, but I'm not really sold on that. I actually think this will be a big buff in the mid to late game when like tons of shit's being thrown around. Uh, I think it's going to come off a cooldown much more radically than it would take for 5 seconds to go by, even if he had the 6 stacks before.
Well, the now it doesn't specify here, but is it 1 second? So just to reset, instead of Force Pulse requiring 6 ability casts from anybody nearby, now it just has a static cooldown of 21 to 13, depending on the rank. and every time an ability is cast by anyone nearby, the cooldown will drop by 1 second. Do you know whether that's a full second or whether that's affected by your ability haste? So, for example, if you have 100 ability haste at level 5 and the cooldown is 6.5 seconds instead of 13, does every ability cast make it go down by half a second or 1 full second?
I know it'll still be one.
Yeah, the way I'm reading it is that you'd get a full second off too. And in that case, I agree. This is actually going to be pretty nice in the very late game if there's a lot of people nearby and your ability haste is already pretty high. Then you'll be able to use this every few seconds. So that's actually
Yeah.
not too bad. With that said, they did nerf the Null Sphere a little bit. There's some nice quality of life buffs. The base shield slightly up, but the shield AP ratio, and obviously as Kassadin you want to build a lot of AP, has dropped from 40% to 30% of your AP. So I think
Yeah.
that is sizable. You're losing probably about 100 shields, 150 shields. Probably not 100. You're losing about 100 shields. Um, Not even that. You're actually losing, I guess, 70 to 80 at very high AP levels. That's still significant.
Yeah, it sounds bad, but I'm actually of the opinion that it's relatively meaningless. And the reason for that is that component of the ability is really only useful in the laning phase, and it's really only useful if you're laning against another magic person.
Hmm.
And the fact that they increase the base amount, even if they nerf the ratio, I feel like is just going to just give
Yeah,
it
it's
more
helpful early on.
stability in the laning phase, even if they nerf the ratio. Another thing to
Yes.
keep in mind is this shield only lasts like 1 or 1.5 seconds or something, so it's pretty useless outside the laning phase, to be honest.
I wouldn't call it useless. I mean, having the shield, keeping yourself alive so you can basically start to get off these Rift Walk combos is definitely important as Kassadin. But I would agree with you that overall, yeah, like, just how nice Force Pulse is going to be if you're already building a lot of ability haste. This may be an overall buff.
Yeah, I think the Force Pulse is definitely a buff.
I haven't really seen Kassadin more than one or two times this whole season. How about you?
Mm, he's not that popular, to be honest, because his laning phase is so bad.
Yeah.
And people like champions that are like instant gratification the entire game, you know?
I would say he probably didn't have a lot of great mythics really to use either. Would
No,
you agree?
no, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree?
I think he could run like he could run Ludens, he could run
Anchor?
Glacial or Whatchamajigger. He could
Glacial? Why would he want that?
I didn't mean Glacial. I mean
Yeah, you're talking about the Hextech, the thing that shoots the cone, Everfrost.
yeah, he could run Everfrost, he could run the Shattered
Why?
Queen thing. Why?
Yeah, why would he run Everfrost?
Because it just gives him access to something he doesn't have, which is CC.
I guess, but he has such an easy time catching up to people already.
Plus, it gives him tankiness because it has tank stats.
It is good for that.
The other ones don't have tank
A
stats.
lot of mana. That's true.
Yeah, it still gives matters, so he can always. He doesn't even honestly have to run tier. He can just go like full damage as long as his mythic is Luden, Shattered Queen, or Everfrost. He's just fine.
I mean,
Uh,
now would you say the best mythic is going to be Rod of Ages?
I think people will probably be tempted to go back into that, but
Hmm.
seeing as how Rod of Ages doesn't necessarily give him more damage than taking, uh, just taking Ludens or
Right.
Everfrost, I'm not sure people will want to go back to that.
Okay.
They just that item needs a
I
bit
was
of a
thinking maybe
buff.
the I was thinking maybe the upgraded Eternity passive would make it appealing for him.
Well, the thing is, I feel like sustain is kind of it's kind of useless on him because of the way he functions. A little bit going halvesies on it is kind of irrelevant on him since he's like a burst champion.
Yeah, all really good points. The only thing I would maybe yes and to that is that really the Eternity passive is not just sustain. I mean, it is primarily that, but it actually, compared to a lot of the other items that can defend a mage, things like Shattered Queen, um, things like the shield that at points we've gotten on Archangel staff. Over the course of a long fight, just the simple heal on the right champions from Eternity can actually be can actually just kind of outdo all of those um, all of those protections
I'd
in a
ag-
long fight.
I'd agree with you if we were talking about like Rise or Cassiopeia. The way Caston functions, though, that kind of logic just doesn't hold up.
He's a little bit bursty, yeah. All
It
right.
would want to be someone with not only has long fights but has lots of spell casts. You know.
Well, but yeah, I mean, but look at Force Pulse
Yeah.
every 2 or 3 seconds now.
Yeah. Caston and sustain and Caston just don't go together. You know.
I know what you mean.
Okay, let's move on to Kane. And when I first saw this, I kind of thought this was a bit of a goofball change. No matter how many times they nerf Rost, I'll never be convinced that the Shadow Assassin needed buffs. He always had. The way this passive functioned, it basically just repeats the damage of your last ability in the form of magic damage. He's always had like 100 to 0 potential, even after like the durability update. This just makes him come online a little bit earlier. Yeah, I don't really think this is necessary. I hope they buff Rost, honestly, because for all the other stuff, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, they need to buff Rost.
Yeah, but Kane, even in his blue form, has some insane like percentage health damage, right? So it's not like he's gonna be terribly hurt by all these OP tank items.
No, he doesn't have any percentage health damage.
Doesn't have any?
No, only Rost has that.
Only Ross, and that's on the queue.
Yeah, and his ultimate.
Hmm. I thought that blue also had it on the queue. I guess I'm wrong.
No, it's just a flat amount, and then his ultimate's only
There
the
you go.
base amount.
That's why they're doing it then to keep up with Rust. Because not having percentage health in an environment like this, as a an assassin type of jungler, or at least like a bursty type of jungler, like Blue Cane is. That's probably why they figured he needed that. And honestly, if I had to make the call, they're probably right.
This doesn't do a percentage of someone's max health. This does a
I
percentage
understand
of your
that.
own ability.
I understand that, but I'm saying since he doesn't have that tool in his kit, they needed to buff that. They needed to buff Blue Cane.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Okay.
When he ults, he actually refreshes this passive too. So, yeah.
Yeah, no. Percentage health is so important in this meta that if you want to take a champion that can deal percentage health, aka Red Cane, and a champion that can't, aka Blue Cane, you definitely need to buff the blue side of it.
Uh, I don't really agree with that because they're both good at fighting different types of champions.
They are, but like, what type of champion are we seeing a lot of now, and what type of champion is running the Rift?
I honestly don't know. Her tank's
It's
big right
super
now.
tank. It's the super tanks, yeah.
Well,
It's also like fighters that can build like lots of health, but also have like good base damages. They're really good right now too.
well, all I'm thinking about is what he actually is a counterpick towards, and that's other squishy champions. I don't really care
Correct.
how good he is against tanks.
Yeah, it's just the sense is that's a less important tool right now to be able to take out a squishy than it
Yeah,
was 2 patches ago.
it's true, but I don't know. I don't think
All right, let's agree to disagree.
it's his whole reason for being. Okie dokie. Next up, yeah. Where do you think Cassante sits right now? I actually thought he'd be halfway decent, but now I kind of think he's insanely underpowered for how much
We have not
resistances he
seen.
needs.
I've only seen him once, to be honest. I don't have enough experience in the games to make a good call on Cassante. I'm gonna reserve the right to judge him later on.
I've messed around with him a bit, and my conclusion is he's not really good even if you build a lot of AD or a lot of health. He needs a
Hmm.
lot of resistances because that's what his shit scales with, and he needs so much resistances that he gets really tanky, but he's never really good at fighting, to be honest. Even though he has like all of this CC, and I feel like the second half of his ultimate just completely missed the mark. It just feels goofy and dumb. I honestly think his ultimate will get like a pretty big rework down the line. It
All
just
right,
it
we might have to
feels
bet a
feels
stuffed crust
useless.
pizza on that. I don't think that. I think what they do with a lot of the champs when they try to give them these mini reworks is they change everything but the ult.
Nah, I mean I feel like it just initially missed the mark, so I could see them
It's
reworking it to some
possible.
degree.
All right, we'll figure out a bet to make later on that. Some time frame with which, if it gets reworked, I'm gonna owe you a stuffed crust pizza.
Okay, next up we got Lilia. Now, originally on the PvE, there was a nerf to the percentage of max health she did on this her passive, as well as this ability, but they took that away, and now it's just a nerf on this damage ability. This is obviously going to hurt her, but like so much of her kit is in her passive that this is kind of going to go under the radar. I mean, to be honest.
Oh, it's the passive that they're nerfing, the Dreamland bow.
What?
Are we looking at the same set of notes?
Her Q.
Dreamland bow, total damage health ratio reduced to 5% from 6.
Uh, the thing I'm looking at only says blooming blows.
Hang on, let me
I
refresh.
just refreshed mine.
Oh, yeah. They got rid of that in the last day and a half. Then cool.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yes, it is. You said there was a time that they were looking at doing that. But what I thought was my current notes. What I thought was my current notes was showing that. Okay, so yeah, that's actually a pretty big revert. So yeah, base damage reduced. Um, oh, so she actually gets more damage at level 1 with Blooming Blows. Yeah, this really isn't that bad at all. This is a pretty insignificant nerf to Lilia because, like you were saying, the Dreamland Bow or passive is where she's doing a lot of her damage over time. This is pretty insignificant, and I'm kind of happy about that. I like Lilia. I like her place on the Rift. It's fun to try and chase her around, and she always gets away if she manages to make it a nice long extended fight.
Yeah, she's fun.
Yeah, so I think she was probably above average before this tiny, tiny nerf. I think she's still gonna be a little bit above average. Keep playing her, she's good.
Okie dokie. Next up, we got Malphite with just a straight up big buff to his E, I want to say. And yeah, this is just straight up pretty decent buffs for just conventional tank Malphite. It's actually a pretty big buff considering he doesn't like build AP if he's going for this kind of tanky build for the most part.
Yeah, a little bit extra base damage. 40% armor ratio is kind of nice. If you're building Malphite right, you can certainly get, at least at times while your W's doing its job, several hundred armor. So this will be another 60, 70, even 80 damage. Just from the
Yeah,
armor ratio, another 20
probably
or 30. Hmm.
probably be even more to that because when his passive shield is up, the bonus armor
Yeah,
he gets from his W is tripled.
yeah. So you can get probably 100 extra damage from this in the end game, just from using your E in a little area of effect. It's pretty nice. Malphite's already in a pretty good place, I feel like. One of the interesting things about him in this current meta is that he's already building his armor stat. So unless the enemy is forcing you to build a lot of MR, you can just build like all health, very few like resistances from items, and kind of get away with it.
Hmm. So you want to build just health and no armor?
I feel like you probably can.
So what is he getting
Um,
like Sterix, Black Cleaver, or something? Titanic?
yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe like War Mugs. I guess Sunfire is armor. Yeah, I guess most of the mythic that he would build also have some armor on them. You could build something like I don't Catalyst, just sit on some ruby crystals for half the game if you want to. I guess you're just naturally building a lot of the resistance that he needs to build anyway. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But if you want to go like just health, you can do it now since he's already providing so much of the armor for you.
Yep. He's good. Okay, next up we got Maokai. And can you explain this, what is it, fourth or fifth back and forth on his passive now? Explain that
Yes.
to me.
Okay, I will explain it to you. This has gone between 10% at max rank and 15% at max rank, I believe 5 times now. They've lowered it and raised it within that range this season. And it's not like they even like nerf it 2 or 3 times in a row or buff it 2 or 3 times in a row. They just flip back and forth, like they're like some type of like swappy squirrel. I have no idea what they're thinking with this. Like just set it somewhere and leave it. I don't think that Maokai has been like so unhealthy for the game that we need to change him every 2 patches, but I guess Riot thinks that he is.
You should
Yeah, I don't get this either.
just settle on 5 to 15.
Now the good thing here is they've at least gone in the middle, right? Now we have 4 to 12 based on level for his passive.
Yep. I feel like that's really strong, but this buff to his Q I feel like is just as powerful since he's so reliant
Yeah,
on
this is
base
nice.
numbers. With how low
Mhm.
the cooldown on his Q is, this is really going to up his trading potential in the laning phase.
Yeah, not only in the landing phase, but take a look at the bonus monster damage. It is increased by 40 at all levels, which is a huge buff in the first few levels. This will make his early jungle clear much easier.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah, nice buff
that'll.
for Maokai. I'm wondering if maybe they have him in what I hope that they think is the right place now.
I could see him getting changed again.
Yeah, so can I.
Maybe they can increase the AP ratio on his saplings.
Well, we're going to talk about Tom Kenshin a little bit, but it seems like that's probably like the next type of change they're going to make. They've been doing this with a lot of other tanks. That's funny.
Okay, next up we got the Kaiser, which they decided to make him have a harder time jungling. Not that you see him jungling more than once a season. So now he has to hit the big monster to turn his passive on. And he doesn't chop him up as fast as he used to either, because I guess it was too easy for him to jungle, which I don't actually think he was a very fast jungler early on.
Yeah, I never really particularly liked Kaiser as a jungler. I think he's one of the strongest champs in the game, top, even mid. But it doesn't have the same kind of all game effect in the jungle, and it's weird to see them nerfing that. I don't know if they want to just push him out of the jungle completely. What do you think?
Just the nature of the way his passive and Q function, I don't think he'll be able to be pushed out of the jungle if someone wants to do it, especially with all these new jungle changes where they just make the jungle more dumbed down and more accessible every season. You know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
this to me doesn't seem like such a big change. Because first of all, he probably wasn't going to be doing 180 damage with Darkness Rise against monsters at level 1 in the first place. And the cap at the high levels is at least nearing that height of 180. And I never
no,
thought that jungle was Kaiser's best role anyway.
that change almost makes me think that someone was having a really easy time sneaking like early Dragons and Herald or something.
Oh, you think it was for the epics?
Well, they're the only champion that would have that high threshold really early on,
Yeah, that's a good point.
or the only monsters or whatever.
Yeah, early on they would have lower max HP. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, next up we got Senna, and basically they gave her the same treatment as Morgana, where you can't buffer the animation and then shoot your high impact hard CC right in someone's face by flashing on top of them. I'm not sure how they decide who can and can't do this. For example, Lux can do it, but Morgana, and now Senna can't do it. There's a million champions that can do
Buffed in
this.
so many ways.
Yeah, there's a million champions that can abuse the like flash buffer animation thing, but they decided that Senna's was too damning, I guess.
It's probably just how often it happens in pro play, because this is the type of thing that platinum or below, very few people are doing, and even if people can do it perfectly, it's often not worth, spending your flash for a fight you probably could have won anyway.
Well, if you know you're
Uh,
getting a gank, it pretty much seals their fate.
yeah, yeah, but often again at plat and below, the gank is going to result in kills anyway. It's really at these top levels where it's so hard to pick up a kill, without a big team fight that these flash buffer type of plays were actually worth taking the risk on.
Well,
So my guess is that at either in like Challenger or probably in Pro Play, a lot of people were abusing this with Senna.
yeah, that's just kind of the nature of the game, though. I kind
All
of,
right, let's talk about the Shyvana change.
yeah, this is only a nerf to her human form E, which I didn't really have a problem with because that kind of complements her more tank play
Hmm.
style. Because I believe she has to auto attack to detonate the mark to do this damage. So
Also complements the tank playstyle maximum health, and that's the part that they decided to reduce the ratio for. What are we doing here? Do they only want Shyvana to be an AP champ now?
I don't know. She's really nasty when she's actually built correctly. So
She used to be.
no,
Now it's
she
like you might
still
as well.
is. She still
She's
is.
okay, but it's like you just build a pure AP. You can do 90% of someone's health bar with your E from 1300 range.
Yeah,
And when I say someone, I mean multiple people.
the hitbox on that ability is criminal.
It's insane.
It
It
makes it
belongs in
makes
a straight
yeah,
jacket.
it makes Karma's Mantra Q look like tame and garbage. That's how broken it is. Since it functions basically on the same physicality, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
twice as broken. Actually, I'd say
It's like
three
playing with
times
an
as
atom
broken.
bomb. It's like playing with an atom bomb. It's I don't know why they keep trying to push Shyvana towards that play style. Because they keep buffing her AP ratios and they keep reducing her tank builds.
Well, she is one of the champs that's
Oy, oy, oy.
on the pipeline to get reworked in the future.
It can't
So
come soon enough. And I have to say, like, I read what they were looking to do with the rework. It's good stuff. So
I
that one can't come soon
I
enough.
haven't seen any of that, but I
Yeah.
hope she is a way cooler, burlier looking dragon from like WoW instead of some scrawny ass like anorexic dragon that
Actually
she
literally
is.
talked about they want to like they want to basically double down on the dream of being this like gigantic dragon leaping at people and breathing down their neck. So I think they're going that
That
route.
sounds fun. They should
Yeah.
give her a flame breath that's like a toggle, and you just point it around like Vel'Koz's thing or something. That'd be fun.
That would be freaking awesome, actually. That's a great idea. But that's what I don't get, right? Like that's the perfect direction. And meanwhile you have the balance team basically making all these little like tiny changes in the other direction before we get there. I don't know if it's the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, or they just want to give AP users their little bit of time in the sun before they rip it all away. I don't really understand why that discrepancy is there.
I want her to still smack people with her claws, and I'm thinking they should replace
Yeah.
one of her abilities with like a tail swipe when she's in her dragon form. That would be cool.
Dude, yeah, you're describing a pretty sweet rework. I would play that.
Yeah, just put me in charge of this damn outfit. I do the community right.
I'm thinking maybe stomping on people like Mininar does, but as the big dragon.
Yeah, just replace all of her abilities in dragon form. They can come up with way cooler stuff.
Agreed.
Okay, next up we got Scion, and this just makes his lazy Q a bit more impactful since the damage on it is so utterly pathetic, while his channeled Q is so utterly devastating.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is more of like a last hit tool or a farming tool when you do the unchanneled part of his Q.
Yeah, the mana, the extra mana, both at level 1 and throughout the game, is going to be nice. He is a champ that can run out of mana.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't really
and
mind him ever running out of mana.
I do want to say, unlike Cho'Gath, oh, I see it a bunch. Unlike Cho'Gath, this is a champion I've seen a lot since the OP tank item rework.
That makes sense.
And he has been just powerful as F. So like I I'm very surprised to see him getting buffs here. Granted, they're not huge and they're not buffs to the cheesiest parts of his kit or anything like that. But it's surprising to see him get buffs at all because he is just a terror out there on the Rift. And even if you kill him, he takes down your turret.
Well, they did pull back on that for a few
A
months
little
back.
bit, but not enough. Like he can still cheese it pretty good. All right.
Okay, next up we got Syndra, and I'm actually surprised this champion hasn't received more changes since her mini rework that I felt like was wholly unimpactful and overall a nerf. But I don't know. I guess someone's under the assumption that it put her in a good place that was different enough for where she was for 10 years.
Yeah,
Feel
I
like she's
feel like
pretty much still in the same spot, to be honest.
I feel like the rework kind of missed the mark, just in the sense that people don't seem to really enjoy playing her that much. They don't enjoy having to stack the shards.
Well,
They
you don't
don't seem
really
to
have to make a conscious effort to stack those. You get those
Oh,
just
you don't. It
basically by
rewards you for
playing.
doing the things you already do. Same way that like Veigar, for example, does. It rewards you for doing the things you would already do. With that said, I just feel like a lot of people don't feel like it's particularly satisfying or fun. I don't see her played a lot. I don't see the people that are playing her really feeling themselves or having a great time. I think they missed the mark a little bit on that one, even though the ideas were good.
I
So
think
here we have.
she's
Hmm?
better in like the late game, the far late game than she was before, just by nature of having the execute and the built-in little Rabadon's modifier. I
Yeah,
do think in the late game she is a lot better, but for the rest of the game, I feel like she plays pretty much identically to the way she played before with a shit early game.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so what they did here was just nerf the or buff the true damage she gets from her maxed out W.
Right, but they also nerfed the Transcendent bonus damage, and then they just straight up nerfed her E. I think it's overall a nerf, right?
Well, she needs more than 400 AP to get back the same strength that she lost from the base numbers.
Yeah, and that's not even counting what she lost from Scatter the Weak.
Well, I was talking about the same amount of bonus true damage.
Mm-hmm. On the W you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To break even on that bonus damage, you need several hundred AP. And then you're breaking even on the W, and you've still lost considerable power on the E. So overall, this is, I would say, definitely a nerf. Um,
Most
and it's kind of
assuredly.
unfortunate. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because I don't think she was in a great place to start with.
Having the cooldown nerfed on her E is a big deal since that's like her whole bread and butter cheesy stun that's like impossible to miss with.
Yeah, once that transcends, the angle is really cool. That's actually, I think, kind of the coolest part of her mini rework recently. The fact that you can fire the spheres off at such a crazy angle now.
Yeah. I feel like there's very few opportunities where that comes into play.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I just think it's very cool. It's kind of like the hardest they went into improving her feel, allowing her to feel like she's really like transcending and becoming not only more powerful, but being able to kind of express new abilities as she grows throughout the game, which I think is what they were aiming for with this mini rework. And I think that was kind of the part of the kit that hit the best. So it sucks to see them, increasing the cooldown, reducing the ratios, just making that skill worse in general.
Yep. All right, let's move on to undoubtedly the silliest changes in this patch for sure.
Yeah.
And this is he's actually gotten a number of these changes over the last month, but this one does tend to border on like Joker levels of Arkham Asylum silliness or something here.
It's so serious.
Yeah, they all I can think is this is just a huge push for demonic embrace comboed with like Heartsteel, because that's really the only thing that makes sense. Because it doesn't make sense for him to build a lot of AP items, and Ryla's is obviously goes to complete waste. So it feels like it's just demonic embrace or bust. Uh,
Well, you
yeah,
certainly didn't bury the lead there. Yeah. I was hoping we were going to kind of talk about all these changes and then get to your very good idea of demonic embrace is the way to take advantage of all this. But to reset a little bit, not only have they increased his AP ratios on his abilities to insane levels, Abyssal Dive has 150% AP now. Um, but they also added an AP ratio per 100 bonus health on his passive, which, in the simplest terms, means that having a lot of AP and a lot of bonus health at the same time is the best way to take advantage of this. One or the other is not as good as having both of them.
no, I don't feel like this pushes him into exclusively needing Abyssal Mask. The change, if they only this change to Tongue Lash, where they increase the missing health heal, that change alone is good enough to where he could ignore all of these AP ratios, because just receiving that much health from doing his Q, which has a very low cooldown, having just more health and less AP, I feel like is enough to ignore all of these AP shenanigans. And his abilities are just potent on their own. This is just
Yeah.
like hilarious, like kind of brawly stuff.
Yes, so that's fair. He was already quite good even before these buffs. So you can ignore all these buffs to his AP, play him like you did a couple patches ago, just building tons and tons of health, and of course, he's still really good. But the fact that you can build health all game and then as a third, fourth item, tack on Demonic Embrace, which also, Demonic Embrace gives you, I believe, AP for every for every 100 health you have, right? Or is it the other way around? It's that way. Right?
You
You get
gain
extra AP per health.
you gain 2% AP of your bonus health.
Right. So you think about like a single giant spell, which would normally be 380 health. That would give you an extra 8 AP in addition to the bonus health, which is about 200 gold worth of AP for free if you have the Demonic Embrace on you. That's in addition to the AP and the health stats that Demonic Embrace already has.
Yep.
So all you need to do is just build health all game, and again, TK can bring that health up to insane levels, and then stack on the Demonic Embrace as one of your final items to take advantage of all these insane AP ratios. It's just kind of a shame that there aren't more items in the game that offer health and AP. Because they've taken a few tanks lately, I think, and tried to give them like these like utterly silly AP ratios. And I don't know why they're trying to do that, except maybe to make Embrace a thing. Because yeah, I guess Rylai's has that as well, but a champ like Tahm Kench doesn't need it. He's already slowing you all the time. Um, there just aren't too many items in the game that he can really build for health and AP. It's just build a bunch of health and then take the Embrace, I think. Can you think of anything else?
No, that's pretty much the only one that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why these seem like really silly changes to me as well. Other thing I do want to point out, the change to Devour. Instead of being a fixed duration of 2.5 seconds, the shield strength now decays by 200 every second once you regurgitate it. And so if you're getting a really big shield there, um, yeah, it can actually hang around for a while. Maybe get yourself back into the fight a couple seconds later. I don't know.
Doesn't even
Not a bad
mention that
mechanic.
that also scales with 150% AP or something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
One of the
this is
biggest take,
utterly silly.
yeah,
Go on.
considering that he can have somewhere between like 2 to 4,000 bonus health, meaning
Mm-hmm.
this extra damage from his acquired taste will go up to like 30 or 40% AP or something crazy. Uh, Towards champions, the damage of acquired tastes applies on his Q. So his Q already does really high base damage on a really low cooldown before. So
He has a 100% AP
yeah,
ratio.
taking all this into account is just absolutely preposterous.
Yeah.
It's a really low cooldown with really high base damage already, with
Yeah.
no AP taking into account whatsoever. And acquired taste already stacks with a percentage of Tom Kench's bonus health. Now it's also stacking with a percentage of his bonus health that's also a ratio of AP. So
Yeah.
uh,
That's what we have here is a strong champ that already plays really well with some of these new items that is now getting additional pretty big buffs. What do you think? You think this pulls him into S tier climb the ladder territory?
it's really easy to look at these AP ratios and get really excited, but I think this trying to abuse this top I think will be kind of foolish. You're still going to want to run like a tank item first top
Oh, that's the
just
other.
because if you're trying to go leverage this AP stuff, other conventional top laners are gonna like just all in him too quickly. This is something that's like I feel like is I was mentioning the other day that I can only see these AP ratios truly being leveraged on like support Tom Kench in some kind of silly like Luden's builds and stuff since
Yeah.
the ratios are so preposterous. I mean, literally, you do absolute zero damage with Abyssal Dive plus Tongue Lash. So it's, you know,
Yeah,
it's
and just
pretty
as a little bit of
similar.
inside baseball, like we try not to talk too much about the patch changes until we actually get on recording, so that our takes are fresh and we're not kind of polluting the other person's opinions. But we chat, we play games outside of this, so sometimes we just see a ratio or a change that's really funny and we'd like to talk about it. And this was one of them, and this was one of them that we actually did talk about the other day. So you were saying that you think that this is going to be abusable on support. I actually think the exact opposite. And that's because some of these changes are really based around his ability to build both lots of health and lots of AP, and therefore build lots of items. I think that these are really indexed around his ability to have a high gold income, and on support, you're not going to have a real high gold income. I think that these changes are actually going to help him more top than support. That's my opinion. It's because of these ratios of two different stats that scale off of each other. It's almost the same way that you want to funnel your gold into the ADCs, the carries, who need to build multiple stats: attack damage, attack speed, critical chance. The more stats that you need that all feed into one another, the more gold income you need. And therefore, I think the more that it helps a carry or a solo laner rather than a jungler or a support.
Well, I hear what you're saying,
That's my
and I
theory.
have like a twofold argument.
Hmm.
For one, I feel like the biggest, most powerful of these changes is not any of the AP ratios. It's that extra percentage of missing health he heals him for himself every single time he Qs a champion, which he gets a lot of Qs off in fights. And that is just like a gigantic heal. And that's even more than it used to heal right when he got his mini rework. Then they nerfed it to what it was. And now it's even higher than that was.
That's not to be understated.
So I think that's actually the most powerful change. And then
Hmm.
as far as the not very good with support, I just like to preface that support Fiddlesticks doesn't get a lot of gold, but his ability is so incredibly potent in terms of numbers that it doesn't really matter. And I feel like these numbers are so preposterous that it wouldn't really matter if he didn't get a lot of gold.
I hear you. At the same time, support Fiddlesticks is all about CC. Whereas Tom Kench, while he does have some effective CC, support Tom Kench is more about being that actual tank for the team.
I mean, I think that's a good way to play it too. And
Hmm.
I mean, he's got a stun, a knock-up, a suppress, and a slow. So I definitely think he's got plenty of CC to get off a really cheesy AP build.
Fiddlesticks has 11 silences every 3 seconds.
Uh, doesn't work like that anymore.
It's still pretty annoying.
Yeah, but to preface, late game Abyssal Mask, Redonkulous, or Demonic Embrace, Redonkulous value.
Um, why not?
Yeah. Alright, let's move on to a champion that's near and dear to my heart and just keeps getting nerfed. And that's Trundle. He's still going to be ridiculously good because he has a million built-in steroids and stat cheesy stuff where he steals stats, gets heals sustained through all his W passive and ultimate and Q and stuff. He just gets a million steroids from a million different things. He's still going to be good, but this just losing 5% is a really big deal because this always gets comboed with his W, which increases heals from all sources, similar to Spirit Visage and Spirit Visage also. That just losing like 1/5 or 1/6 of this ability's damage is pretty big deal because it's not just a damaging ability. This is also a heal. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Just for anybody watching the video, rather than just listening, there are some numbers that look weird here, and I think that is just a result of LeagueWiki having input the type of skill incorrectly into the patch notes. So I think that the old values were 20, 27.5, and 35% at the 3 ranks of the ultimate. And you're just losing 2.5% at rank 2 and 5% at rank 3.
You sure this didn't have 5 ranks before?
I don't believe it did, Chrissy.
I swore you could level this up at 23 and 27.
Oh, you think it was some like weird bodega version of Jace?
No, it's more like Udyr who gets like 6 points and stuff instead of 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's really no reason to nerf this ability, seeing as how it can
It
only
was
ever
very
affect
strong
this.
overall, I think.
It's a strong ability, but seeing as how it's like a single target ability and he's
Yeah.
such a binary one dimensional champion, I feel like it's kind of dumb for him to lose strength on such an important ability for him.
Here's my theory if you really want to go deep into it. The fact that it just objectively are higher maximum health in the game, especially against the people that Trundle is usually going to be trying to chase down, means that the max health ratio was extremely effective, and therefore he was a stronger than desired champion. And so when you want to nerf him by a little bit, you nerf the part of him that's become really, really kind of out of line recently, which is ability to deal all this damage based on the target's maximum health when the target is going to have a lot of maximum health.
Yeah, I never like it when they add something to the game and then instead of changing that something, they have to change every single champion that interacts with it. I always feel
Yeah,
that's retarded.
unfortunately, I agree with you. It's almost like they're hurting the other parts of the game in order to fix a problem that they themselves created.
Exactly. I'll never forget the perfect example of this. When the Keystone Masteries first came out, there was something called Deathfire Touch that works a lot like a Scorch or whatever, except it was based on either your AD or AP. And what it did was it was just a damage over time effect, but it was so stupidly good on Jin, who basically breaks every item or rune in the game that has scaling, that they had to basically nerf it for everybody. So it was still good on Jin, but then it was now worthless on everybody else in the game because it was so good on Jin. Jin is particularly the champion that ruins a lot of stuff for a lot of champs.
Oh, we'll talk about that a little bit more with Zeri.
Just throwing it out there.
All right.
Okay, next up we got Yumi, and I don't even know what to make of the changes on this champ anymore. Obviously, she still has a lot of times where she's really powerful, but so much of her strength is gated behind like another bruiser already being in a good position that I'm not so inclined to believe that she herself is in like a strong position at the moment right now anyway.
Right, but those bruisers are really good now. Yeah, I always like seeing Nerfs on Yumi. The root duration being reduced significantly. That's kind of nice in my opinion. The cooldown on Bop and Block being increased in landing phase, that's kind of sad to me. I think that's actually the most skillful and interesting part of our kit, specifically during landing. But yeah, Yumi Nerfs.
Yeah, I don't really like the change to her ultimate. That's like the big thing she does. I almost feel like they should make it so like the first champion hit gets rooted for like 2 seconds, and then everyone else after that gets rooted for like only like 0.75
Look,
seconds or
if they were going
something.
to nerf her E further, it would be 0.
What are you talking about? Her heal?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing is just. I can't believe how many times that thing's been changed. As long as it gives movement speed and attack speed, it'll still be good. Even though they
That's
make it
exactly
cost
correct.
like 7,000 mana to use it once.
That's exactly correct. Like your ability to provide that type of mobility to a teammate while also being safe yourself. That's making it hard for them to do anything with the rest of her kit, and
Okie
it's why
dokie.
the bruisers are so good with her. But yeah, let's move on.
Next up, we got Zac, who apparently needed more sustain. I actually feel like his sustain was in a very healthy place, and this is probably going a bit too far. What with all the crazy health shenanigans going on right now. Uh, yeah, this is pretty crazy.
Yeah, more damage on stretching strikes, lower cooldown, and then of course higher healing when he picks up one of his chunks. I like Zac, honestly. Like he's one of my favorite tanks to see in games, whether he's on the enemy team or my team. I think he brings just a lot of fun interactions. So I don't hate seeing him get buffed, but yeah, was it necessary? Maybe not.
Well, considering how much he can uh, drop a lot of those chunks, this is like
Hmm.
pretty powerful.
Yeah, at the same time, like if he can't pick up the chunk, he is losing that health, and with higher health totals, that does hurt him a little bit. But I agree. Like he was in a fine place, in my opinion, as well. And a little surprising to see him get buffs, but I'm kind of happy to see it at the same time. Zac's a fun champion.
Yeah, he's okay. Okay,
Oh boy.
we're gonna skip this next one.
Oh, are we?
I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna go over all these Zeri changes. They don't know what the hell they're doing. It looks like a buff overall. Uh, I think the only change of real consequence is the one to her Q, where they increase like the Q's overall total damage somewhat.
36, 37. Still counting. There we go. Okay, there's not counting the clarifications that they made. There's 37 different changes that were made on Zeri. Uh,
Yeah,
on
you
the
can pretty much ignore the changes to like her W, which was only being used as like Shyvana levels of cheese lately. So they just
okay,
put that
29
more in
changes
line.
then.
The only real change of consequence, like I said, is her Q and the fact that her E has unlimited applications of it within the time window instead of only being able to use it 3 times when you dash. Now she can use
Yeah.
it as many times as she can auto attack, basically. So that's a lot better than it was.
Um,
She still has all the stacking movement speed and shit that she had before on her ultimate, and as long as she still has the stacking movement speed that lasts infinitely, as long as she keeps autoing, she'll still be the same thing basically.
yeah, I think maybe the biggest change, in my opinion, is maybe the range reduction to the burst fire. I think that can actually loom larger than 825 to 750 seems like.
Yeah, that's a big
Uh,
deal.
yeah, lightning crash seems like a nice buff overall, but
Caitlyn's yeah,
yeah,
Caitlyn's range is 650, so
yeah,
yeah, it's a
I
big
think that
deal.
that range is going to hit hard. as far as the reduction on burst fire. One thing I want to say about Zeri, from a more general sense, is that Zeri, I think, represents the type of champion where Riot has they're in their character design in the last several seasons. They don't always do this. Sometimes you get a healthier champion like Set. But often what they try to do is they try to make a champ that just completely breaks one or more of the rules of League of Legends. Zeri, where her auto attack is a skill shot, and her skill shot is or her ability is an auto attack, basically. Yumi, where she cannot be essentially interacted with by the other team, and is essentially just a steroid for another champion. Aphelios, where he is essentially five different champions in one, and cannot choose his rotation, cannot opt essentially into the guns that he wants the most at any given time. These all break some type of fundamental expectation or rule that all the other champions in the game abide by, and that can be very good for making them interesting champions. So there are design pluses for that. The problem is that in a competitive game, this makes them very, very hard to balance. And when they do fall out of balance, you don't have the same levers that you can pull with all the other champs. Because you're going to need to hit something so hard, almost like you were saying with Jhin. It's the same type of concept. You're going to need to hit something so hard that you either ruin it for all the other champions, or you push the champion that you're trying to balance so far out of what was their niche, their unique thing, that they're no longer even like unique or worth playing. This is the type of thing that can work just fine in a single player game, where if there's a little bit of a balance problem, or a very high learning curve, or just something very unique and niche that a few players are going to want to play, will be fine. A good analogy for Zeri in a single player game might be Pascal from Tales of Graces, where her auto attacks, or her A arts as they were called, literally were, or at least acted like skills, and her skills had the range and the feel of auto attacks.
Okay.
And in that game, people love Pascal.
Leave a comment if you have any idea what that's a reference to.
Yeah, I am getting a little bit, I guess, off topic here, but in a very, but just in a larger design sense, like I think this is an interesting tangent. That in a single player game, a champ like Zeri, I think would be a lot of fun. And in a multiplayer game, it really pushes her into where you're seeing this is like the third or fourth time they've had to change 30 different things about her to try and hit the right balance. And spoiler alert, they're not going to.
Well, I agree of pretty much most of what you said in regards to Aphelios. I don't think it's a bad thing that after 140 or so champions, that new champions are overly unique in some capacity. I do think Aphelios is fundamentally poorly designed. What I think the problem with Zeri is her kit can just be much more simplified without really losing anything that she does. Like, her Ultra Shock Laser has all this shenanigans on it, but it's the same as like Jinx's W, and that's like a sentence, you know?
Okay, so you feel like kit overload is actually the problem here,
Yeah, but I
where
mean,
they're trying to add too many different types of utility and little like gadgets to it instead of just focusing on what's core. That's
yeah,
interesting.
I just feel like they're too finicky. Like, Spark Surge isn't much different from Lucian's Relentless Pursuit, yet
Mhm.
look at all this crazy shit it's got on it. It's just, yeah, because it basically does the same thing as this. It applies his passive, and yeah, I don't know. I just feel like this kit can be much more simplified without losing hardly anything. It's
Right.
just
I
a
feel
lot of
like the
nonsense.
I feel like the breaking of the basic handshake that mechanics or champions traditionally have in League is the problem. But I think that a good solution, almost like what you're saying, would be, and this is something that Riot did a lot in like seasons 5 to 8, and occasionally they still hit this right. Instead of adding all these different goofy bits of utility, or instead of breaking a fundamental rule of League of Legends, what they would do in those kind of mid seasons back in like 2005, 2015 to 2018. They would do a lot of making champs that either move or feel a little bit differently in the way that you control them, or have really interesting hitboxes instead of just like circles or lines. Lucian is a great example of that. And I think that that if they had maybe just kind of consistently continued to do that, because I think there's still a lot of room that Riot has to work with. Their designers are very good in general. I think they could have come up with less problematic champions than Zeri, Yuumi, and Aphelios.
I don't think that.
All right. That's my college thesis length rant on Zeri. Sorry.
I think that Yumi and Aphelios are in a way problematic. I don't think Zeri is problematic. I just think that I don't know why they're making any changes, to be honest. I don't think she's absolutely dreadful in the laning phase, and she's extremely powerful late game because of how much movement speed she can accrue. But all hyper carries are devastating in the late game. I don't know why she's received any changes after her release, to be honest.
I believe her win rates, especially in high elo, were number one in the game at certain points. And again, I think that kind of speaks to how hard a champ like her is to balance.
Well, even if that's true, I don't think it would rationalize how so many parts of every single ability get so many changes
That
rather
much
than
we can agree on.
rather than just dropping the damage on like an ability here and there. Every single
Yeah,
time she gets changes, they change like 10 different aspects of every single ability.
I don't want to get into a big rant again, but essentially, kind of my point is that the types of things that I'm describing, where you're breaking that fundamental handshake in design, for a multiplayer game at least, can't be fixed with numbers. You would have to push the numbers so far in one direction or the other that the champ would no longer be relevant in general use.
Well, I don't
Like
really
the
agree with that. I feel like there's two core parts of her kit, and that's that her Q is her auto attack, and that she can stack her ultimate infinitely. I feel like she doesn't have to, even if she lost a lot of damage or whatever, if she kept both of those things, I think she would always be good late game, like every hyper carry is late game.
I think if you were to push only the numbers down to where she were quote unquote balanced, let's say at a high level, I feel like she would not be able to carry herself based on the things that you were talking about in general play or at most levels. I feel like that's why they're trying to change 37 different things here. And just to be clear, I mean 37 quite literally if you count the bullet points.
Whatever. I don't personally find her unbalanced, and she's gonna have a much harder time leveraging the movement speed when her Q is a lot shorter range now. Okie dokie. Next up, we got changed these jungle pets, which admittedly I haven't even really seen in action that many times. So, why don't you tell me what you think about this crap?
Well, they're in every single game except ARAM, I suppose. Yeah. So the large monster heal and mana are increased for the jungle pets. However, pretty much everything else is being reduced. Gold is going down by a lot. Pet's base damage is going down by a lot. We have the health ratio reduced. There are ways to get two bonus traits for a large monster takedown instead of one. But what I think that all these changes basically come together to mean is that they were finding that it was too profitable to just stay in the jungle with your pet as a jungler and power farm. That's generally what you can take away from it when you see changes that reduce the gold but increase the sustain in the jungle. They want junglers to be ganking more. They want junglers to be able to arrive at a gank with a lot of health and mana to be impactful. They don't want them to sit in the jungle and power farm for 50 gold per treat for most of the game. And that's the direction that we're pushing this in. And I'm no jungler, but I can agree with this. I noticed that junglers tended to be pretty rich, especially compared to their level in a lot of the games that I've been in. Also, the pet's base damage going down slightly, will mean that the tanks are slightly worse in the jungle, but still probably quite good. So if you're looking to play a jungler that's going to gank more, this patch will be good for you. If you're looking at a power farmer, you'll still probably be fine.
You know what my take on this is?
Mhm.
I feel like these jungle pets are a perfect example of them changing the game just for the sake of changing the game. With how many powerful passives the jungle items have had the last few years that make you nigh unkillable and lots of sustained versus monster when combat,
Yeah,
I feel like this is just a perfect example of them desperately trying to keep the game more fresh.
I don't
But
know if it's
I think
fresh.
it goes complete to waste, honestly.
I think it's more an example of how the jungle is Riot Design's white whale. It's what they've been trying to chase for almost 10 years now, really since like season 3 or 4, um, where they were starting to make a lot of big jungle changes. And they've been just after that trying to get the jungle right that whole time. They've never hit the mark, and they keep trying. And I feel for them. It's definitely a hard role to balance or to make practical in the game.
I think they should just scrap everything they did in the jungle and just bring back Wriggle's Lantern and Feral Flare.
Problem is, none of that was good either. I do remember those items though. They were all right, I guess. They weren't that fun if we're being honest.
Feral's Flare was redonkulously broken. It just stacked infinitely. It was wit's
Yeah,
end,
yeah.
but it would
Remember like
stack
on Yi
infinitely.
and Warwick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like Yi and Warwick using this.
Good times. Before we had little critters following us around.
Yeah, but just like honestly speaking, I don't think that this is so much trying to keep it fresh for fresh's sake. I think it's more that they've never felt like they've gotten it right, and they have been correct about that. They've never gotten the jungle right.
That's
It's
basically
like
an
the one
omission
thing.
to my argument. You know what I mean?
I don't necessarily agree, right? If you're trying to make something better, if you keep trying to rework and perfect it because you know it's not good, that's not fresh for fresh's sake. Fresh for fresh's sake would be it's working perfectly good. Let's reinvent it anyway.
Well, I can't help but notice the jungle receives big changes every year.
Yeah, it's because they just can never get it right. It's
We
their
just
damn
can't
way.
keep getting it right. Oh, this will be the time we get it. Oh, no, let's change it again. Well, what do you know? It's been
Oh
another
my
year.
God.
We should change it again.
It's like the Cleveland Browns. It's like we're just two more moves away from doing this completely
Uh,
right. We're going to the Super Bowl this year.
yes, every season's a rebuilding season. That's right.
All right. Speaking of rebuilding, Heartsteel.
Yeah, this one's gonna hurt a lot of people, and especially yours truly, who's been abusing the hell out of this. It's so much better in ARAM than it is in regular games, where you can tap everyone in the fight and get get every stack you can possibly get in most of the fights, which
Yeah.
just makes every future stack increasingly powerful. And
Yep.
just the infinitely exponential scaling of this item, similar to Cho'Gath's Feast, is just so hilarious. I'm still shocked they even put something like this in the game. Uh, just the fact that takes time to activate and it has like a cooldown per champion, I think will keep it safe from being nerfed in Summoner's Rift. But this was probably mandatory in ARAM, as like people that don't even have a reason to build this item. Most people are building it on them just because it's hilarious.
Yeah. You're always around everybody in ARAM, so it's very easy to stack. So they have the bonus health stacking, and if I'm not mistaken, that'll also have the damage that you're dealing.
No,
Oh no, it has the scaling of the damage that you're dealing with the effect. You're still getting the 125 base.
you'll be doing the exact same amount of damage. You're just gonna get less permanent health.
Oh no, 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 because the damage is based on your health.
Yeah,
So you're getting a little bit less of that too.
you're doing the same amount of damage. You're just getting less health.
The damage is based on your health. Okay, right, right. But because you have less health, you'll do a little bit less damage as well. I am very surprised to see this not nerfed on Summoner's Rift, despite it being best on ARAM. Like it's still an overpowered item on the Rift. I've seen a lot of champions, the Ornns, the Scions of the world, building this to 4 digits of bonus health, in addition to the 800 you're already getting from the item.
Uh, I think if it's a long game and you get like 1,000 or 1,500 out of this, I
Yep.
think that's all right for an item that doesn't give any resistances.
I mean, perhaps, but it feels OP in the games that I've seen it.
Plus, it's not necessarily a strong first buy, and there's no point in buying it if you're not going to buy it first when you're laning with
Right. You
someone
have
who
to
you
buy
can
this item
stack
first.
constantly.
Hmm.
So it is an overtly kind of a weak first purchase.
Yep. But as long as the game goes to a moderate length, you become very, very tanky and powerful. Anyway, yeah, I was just surprised not to see the nerfs on Rift. But good to see it taken to a less insane level on ARAM.
Yeah,
Most
I
hmm
still think that in normals, I do think they'll cut the power of the item by like half or 2/3 for range champions eventually. I don't think they're gonna let that fly forever.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's gonna
I
be
think
a
we'll
range
probably.
champion that'll come along. It probably be Senna or Karma or something that'll abuse this, and then they'll be like, nope, 60% effectiveness for range champions. That's my wager. It'll be with those two champs.
Yeah, just because Ezreal has better mythics.
Ezreal,
Because otherwise he'd be great with this.
Ezreal would have to get too close for this to activate. You have to be within like 700 for it to trigger.
Oh, true, true, true. He has higher
So
range than that. Yeah, yeah.
Karma's the way she heals off her W would make this like really silly. So
Yeah, tank karma. Yeah, and that's
yeah,
been a thing at times. All right, next,
okie
Moston
dokie.
Proceeding. We've got a pretty serious nerf to the tenacity. Although that was just 20% tenacity and slow resist.
Well, considering you didn't get any of these buffs before, it's probably still good.
Yeah, it's fine, but that kind of shows that at this point, like maybe it's just because the tanks were doing so well on the Rift in the first place, that green was actually the strongest bet. I was thinking it was going to be red the whole time. I was thinking green was going to be second and blue would be last by a long margin. And it looks like they feel like green was actually the best.
Uh, I think they're all good, honestly.
Okay,
Next up, we
none of them
got
are bad.
Sunfire Cape. I'm really happy that this got a buff because I feel like now that it's no longer a mythic and doesn't have that super duper PvP passive when the burn is maxed out, thought it would be
Hmm.
kind of weaker. Now that it's getting a nice healthy health boost and making it cheaper, and I have used this a few times. The damage still does stack over time to a pretty good little number, and it still scales with your max health. So it is still powerful. It's just a lot of times it's going to be hard to rationalize building this item.
I don't know that it will be harder to rationalize. Shout out to my friend of mine who I think has a very good theory that a big part of the reason some of these tank items, tank mythics, are overpowered are because Sunfire has been made into a non-mythic, and therefore you can build that with these other mythics in order to get the pushing potential that you get at a Sunfire. You no longer need to give up, uh, you know, your glacial type of mythic. You no longer need to give up something like Heartsteel, which is obviously new. And you can build this along with those. So the fact that this is offering 500 bonus health now, which is quite good, in addition to being made cheaper, I think is just gonna push those like super health tank builds even further off the scales.
Yeah, this obviously synergizes really good with Heartsteel since the burn scales with your max health. But back when this was a mythic item,
Yeah,
I think it was way more impactful that this was a PvP item, not like a pushing wave clear
like
item.
both.
The damage that you could put out when this thing was maxed out, magic damage on hit, was pretty good. I think the
Absolutely.
fact that
When
it just
somebody was
pushes
standing near
fast.
you and you were able to auto them a few times, yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that it like pushes the minions is kind of an afterthought, to be honest.
It's really an important part of the game right now, being able to push, especially in a lane that you're winning. And being able to offer that much bonus health, plus it still has some PvP power, plus the push, at this cost, just seems like it's going to combine with some of these mythics, especially Heartsteel, but also to some extent the Glacial, in really wacky ways.
You mean the Iceborne Gauntlet?
Yes, the Iceborne Gauntlet, exactly.
Okay, next up we got a pretty big nerf to Ravenous Hydra because apparently 13% Omnivamp was straight up broken, but 9% is A-OK. So it no longer gives you extra Omnivamp, but it
Uh-huh.
does still give a pretty generous amount of AD when it's fully stacked. I think it's like 85, 95, something like that. So that's really nice. I do think it's kind of dumb that it didn't give that like above and beyond Omnivamp. That's way more than other items can give you of the same stat, even if you lost half of it when you died. So, guess that was way too busted. I don't really think it was busted.
Yeah, I saw that. I said this is going to be very overpowered. They're giving this item too much. Um, and I'm kind of happy to see it adjusted this quickly. Kind of a shame that the cleave damage for range is as low as 25% now, but what are you going to do?
I don't think a lot of range champions build this, to be honest.
Well, they can't because they take, they hit their ratios so much. I mean, if it was okay for range champions to build this in the first place, like if they didn't think it was going to be powerful on them, they wouldn't have changed the ratio to be half of what you get from melee.
Yeah, maybe.
So as a result, yeah, like at these levels, they're basically saying we don't really want you. We don't. Oh my God, I can't talk right now. We don't really want range champions to build these, and so they take the ratios down to levels that are just not worth using. Besides that, I think it's going to be still a balanced item that if you have a champ that can make good use of it, keep using Ravenous. It's still good for you.
Yeah, it's still a lot of AD.
Yep.
Okay, next
Alright.
up, we got some long overdue ranged nerfs to these monster camps so they'll stop sniping you over the wall. I have no idea why they changed this.
Yeah, it's not worth talking about. Fine quality of life changes. Next.
Okay, we're going to get into something we never get into, and that's ARAM changes. And specifically, it's going to make ranged poke a lot worse because now the further away you are, the less damage the ability in question does to you. Like, particularly thinking of like Nidalee Spears when you look at this, it's going to do a
Yeah,
whopping up to like 30% uh, less damage.
Zareth's a good one to to look at as somebody who's getting hurt by this.
Yeah, this comboed with the fact that melee champions are going to have more bonus MR is really going to help all those people that want to quit in the first 5 minutes when they're against three champions that are ranged, which is something you see in just about every ARAM. Is you'll quickly notice a stark lack of discipline when anyone's playing against a ranged champion.
Pretty much. I couldn't have said it any better than myself. Although you probably could have just stopped with a stark lack of discipline.
There's one thing I know about ARAM. It's people are completely oblivious to the fact that whenever a comp is really strong in the early game in ARAM, they tend to be garbage in the late game because
Yeah,
poke comps tend to be worse later on.
and a lot of the reason for that is because of all these changes that they've made to make it like impossible to to actually heal or shield allies, as well as to do reasonable poke damage to tanks. That used to kind of run the whole game in ARAM if you go back several seasons before they started making all these champion or class specific changes. And now all that poke is still really good at the beginning of the game when you can't just kind of all in and run after someone. But by the time you break the map a little bit more open, by the time you have the stats on these fighters and tanks and juggernauts, it's really hard as a mage. It's really hard as a support to be useful.
Yeah, this is really going to help the people with like self-esteem issues that are stuck playing melee champions in this game. It's a big buff to lack of self-esteem, I'll say that.
There you go. Big buff to self-esteem.
All
Let's
right.
talk about some of the more interesting and important changes to ARAM, though.
Yeah, there's a couple little environmental things that they're going to do where they're going to add the same gates that are in Summoner's Rift, except I think they're going to put them in front of the fountain and just port you to turrets instead of having to walk up there, which is also really going to help your teammates when they have a hard time counting to 5, which is a skill that's very difficult to get your head around in ARAM. It's one of the, if you're new to playing ARAM, it's one of the first things you'll notice how difficult it is to master that skill. Counting to 5, very underrated, very difficult to grasp in ARAM.
Okay, let's practice together, okay? Got one, two. What comes after two?
Your guess is as good as mine. I haven't played ARAM long enough, so I haven't mastered it
Like a
yet.
half of an eight or something like that?
It's very difficult to master this skill. It should be one of
Okay,
those
harder than it looks, okay?
it should be one of those meaningless achievements that you see like under your name on the loading screen. So
Three counter?
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. In a more serious tone, like what this will do is first of all, it's going to be a nerf to the champions that can boost themselves back to lane, the Zillions, the Nidalees, the Lulus of the world, who can get back to lane a little bit quicker in the first place. Now you can always get back to lane quickly. But second of all, what this is going to do is this is going to basically reduce the impact of killing just one or two people. You're going to have less time to work with at an advantage. And that actually is going to change, I think, the balance of tactics a lot in ARAM. It really kind of is an all or nothing. You've got to wipe most of the enemy team in order to be able to take an objective now. Because you have so much less time to take objectives with these hex gates, getting the enemy team back to the front line pretty quickly.
Well, I'd like to correct you there.
Okay.
First off, if you know anything about ARAM, tactics don't
Oh, now you're
really,
an ARAM
yeah,
expert. Can't count to five.
tactics don't really come into a play, and I've never more loosely used the word tactics in my life.
Uh-huh.
I don't think this is going to really change the game much. It's just going to change how fast people can buy again.
All right, I'm talking about serious ARAMing though. And you know what? We're getting We're getting ARAM Clash this month. 3 years in the making. Hundreds of Riot designers, basically, and engineers, working over hot stoves for thousands of hours to make this a reality. The whole community was clamoring for this for years. ARAM Clash. Okay, this is serious ARAM we have to talk about here.
I don't really have a problem with it. They've done like 30 Summoner's Rift clashes.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of it too. Especially for December where it's preseason and there's not a lot of like competitive league going on.
To be honest, I
But
don't see why they couldn't just do both simultaneously. Servers would probably just explode.
same reason they can't ever do Clash on a Wednesday, Chrissy.
Okay, and then the second to last thing we saw here is that, yeah, the melee champions get more and more. That compounded with the nerfs to range damage is really going to help that undisciplined lot. And then the other thing here is that it's going to be harder to heal off minions, but that's going to completely be inconsequential because your teammates will never let you heal off minions anyway, so you won't even notice.
Truer words have never been spoken.
The idea of
Last
your
thing,
yeah. Let me finish my thought. The idea of you having lifesteal is going to completely go over any and all teammates' head, so you'll never actually have to worry about this nerf. It's very, very comforting that you won't have to worry about this affecting your gameplay.
you could see that Riot foresaw this happening. They were thinking far ahead. because they made all kinds of new pings that you could be toxic with a couple patches ago.
Well, unfortunately,
That
they
went
didn't add a I have to
totally
heal off
lifesteal.
minions ping.
It's okay, just use the bait ping like 12 times. It'll be the same effect.
That is the new hotness. I've been baited on a bunch of times already.
Yeah. There is also one new pixel brush on the bottom side of the bridge, which is kind of cool. There used to just be the brushes in the top, and that might change the calculus a little bit. Might change, how you can try and bait other champions who are usually sending skill shots into the top side. Probably won't be a big difference though.
All right. And then the
Oh,
last thing
yeah, go on.
is how the wideness of the lane will be kind of different each game depending on the direction these turrets fall when they get blown up, which probably sounded really cute when they were in the boardroom, but I don't think this is really going to affect the game very much. It'll just be kind of fun. Plus, I'm not sure if it like falls over to such a point where it'll completely block off the right or the left, or if you can
I don't think
simply
it's the
walk
whole thing.
around it.
Yeah, I don't think it's the whole thing. I think you'll eventually be able to walk around it on either side, but I'm not 100% sure.
I feel like it would only be kind of worthwhile if it did completely block off the left side it falls or the right side it falls, because then you can kind of turtle around like a choke point and be like more obnoxious with like Caitlyn or Anivia or something like that, you know?
One thing I do want to say, to give Riot their flower, because I haven't been doing that a lot on this batch, is to say that just the direction of like slightly changing the terrain each game, like they've already done on the Elemental Rift, and are now trying to do a little bit on ARAM. It is kind of a cool thing. It does force you to work out a lot more different situations with formation and team comp. And again, like you're about to probably interrupt me for there's no formation, there's no team comp on ARAM. I get it. But just taking this direction and making each game a little bit unique in its own way without completely changing things up in horribly random ways is a cool direction. I like that a lot.
I honestly don't understand why they make any effort to balance or change this mode whatsoever. I feel like it just gets away more and more what people actually strive to play when they queue up for this. I don't know why they balance it at all.
Yeah, I don't know. It probably wasn't fun, getting stomped by Brand every single game that you saw him.
But I guess since they keep changing it, we know it's not going to go the way of Twisted Treeline that they like didn't bother to balance it all for 5 years until they got rid of it because they said nobody wanted to play it because they in
They
turn
did
didn't balance it.
they did make some actual big changes to tree line, I think two different times along the way, where they actually changed the way the map, the timing, the minion waves, everything worked.
Yeah, it got a
But
hard
no,
rework a long time ago, and that was like it.
yeah. But they never gave it the type of love that they're giving to ARAM. Like this is a mode that's here to stay.
And that's a shame because three's rank was definitely a thing in Twisted Treeline. Very
Yeah, tree line.
cheesy. All right. Well, that was some fun talking about ARAM for a change. Definitely a unique breed of traveler you find on those journeys. Well, that'll just about do it
No,
for.
Jay, we love ARAM too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think it's just fun and not serious. That's why I like it.
Yeah, I think one game, two games every once in a while is a lot of fun too.
Or 10, yeah. Yeah.
10 is what you try to pull me into.
Okay. Anything else to say, man?
Not at all. I think we had a, good rundown of the patch. By Sunfire, I think a lot of tanks are going to continue being very overpowered. And, enjoy it while you can, because it's not going to last.
I know I've been abusing Heartsteel so hard in ARAM. Now I'm going to be like kind of depressed, and I'm not even going to want to build it in ARAM anymore because it's like it's never going to be what it was. You know,
There's always Jack Show the Protean.
I haven't even bought that yet because it sounds so stupid. I'd rather buy that goofy thing that doesn't do anything. Okay, Radiant Dawn, I think it's called. Whatever.
No, you don't want to buy that one.
Yeah, I know
Radiant Virtue.
it's complete garbage.
Radiant Virtue, yeah.
All right, well that'll do it for 12.23. In our next video, if there's some significant changes in between now and when this is released, we'll try to go over those next time. But yeah, that'll do it.
That's that. Have a good December, everyone.